The use of social media is constantly rising, but how is it affecting our mental health and that of our youth?
We'll discuss this today on Real Family Talk. Join us. Today on Real Family Talk, we're discussing the impact of social media on our mental health.
According to the American Psychological Association, limiting daily social media use can significantly enhance our mental health. And those who limit social media usage experience significantly higher positive effect and significantly lower levels of anxiety, depression, and loneliness.
And the opposite has also been found to be true. Increased use of social media leads to a negative impact on our mental health. Dr. Eric Walsh joins us today as we dive into this topic. Dr. Walsh is a medical graduate of the University of Miami. He also earned a master's degree and doctorate in public health from Loma Linda University. He has advised 2 U.S. presidents on HIV/AIDS, George W. Bush and Barack Obama, and has worked to reduce health disparities. Dr. Walsh is a published author and has served as an associate pastor at various Adventist churches. He is currently a practicing physician and healthcare administrator who travels worldwide to speak on various topics. Dr. Walsh, thank you for joining us today on Real Family Talk.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be with you guys today.
So social media use is on the rise. However, your research has found that there is a need to limit the use of social media. Studies show that over 5 billion people around the world use social media. Why is social media so popular?
Well, it's filling a void, honestly. If you go back to about 2019, there was a study released that showed that the mental health of young people has declined significantly over the previous 10 years. We are watching a catastrophic shift in the mental health of young people. And I believe part of that, from a biblical perspective, comes from the fact that if we have removed God from society, replaced it with purely secular ideas, the idea of going all the way back to the French Revolution, kind of the God of reason, we've removed God. And when we remove God, we've removed purpose. There's a Stanford researcher, I don't believe he's a Christian, who says that the greatest threat to our young people is a lack of purpose. But once you remove God and you no longer have purpose, something will fill the void. And there are a lot of things that do that, everything from drugs, alcohol, sexual promiscuity, all the way here to social media, where people try and find relevance, honestly, in likes and clicks and stories. And so they can become almost caught up in the addiction of it. And so we are watching this change. It is very bad on the mind because it is not tangible, and also because it often causes young people especially to compare themselves to things that aren't real.
Yeah, and I hear you saying about the fact that it's a replacement for so many things, but particularly God. Why do you think so many Christians then are getting caught up with this addictiveness of social media when we profess to have God?
Well, I would say one of the things that's happening is some Christians actually use it and to share the gospel. So before we fully demonize social media.
This is true. Yep, we all do.
I do believe that there is a place for it in a technologically advanced world for the spreading of the gospel, the 3 angels' messages, and finishing this work. The problem actually comes when, like anything else, when self becomes the center, or inappropriate secular things become the center of your social media world. If the spreading of the gospel is the center of your social media world, you won't spend 10 hours a day doing it. But if self becomes the center of your social media world, you absolutely will. And if that's just not just promoting yourself and trying to make yourself kind of bigger than you really are, or if that's just being entertained by, and honestly, a lot of times the foolishness of others, either way, you're going to get caught and stuck if that happens.
Yeah. So basically what I'm hearing you say is, let's not demonize it, You know, there's lots of good in social media. We could use it to spread the gospel, but we need to be careful. So social media is very addictive. And what have you found about the addictiveness of social media? What makes
Well,
it so
one of the
insidious?
studies that I looked at, I sent over, really it was interesting. The Pew researchers, actually, there's a thing that says 54% of teenagers say that they would find it very difficult to give up social media. There's a lot about social media that makes it addicting. One of them is you scroll up, so there's no bottom. So the mind keeps looking for the bottom, so you keep scrolling. When you get new messages, DMs, you know, the favorite celebrity you follow or influencer you follow post something, there is a release in the brain of dopamine similar to what is released, but in smaller quantities when someone does cocaine or smokes a cigarette. So there's an immediate gratification. This happens even when you just get instant message on your phone, or just get like a text message on your phone. So this tapping into the dopaminergic pathways of the mind is one of the reasons this thing feels so addicting. And then you bundle that into everything else going on in the world, the insecurity of the world, and people can try and create a safe haven for themselves. Well, and then of course there's a habit forming component. When you put all of it together, it can become really difficult for individuals to give up social media.
That's just unbelievable, you know. And we've also been talking about this topic for a long time, but I've never heard it so poignantly about the fact that just something simple like a text message coming in and what it does to your brain, and it just reminds us about how the whole battle is for our minds, and we're kind of just dichotomizing, like separating the spiritual from the secular, and forgetting that how critical our minds, what we put into our minds is. So we only have a few minutes left in this segment, but we're going to come back. But I wanted to ask you real quickly about how does someone begin the process of changing this addiction? Because we see how destructive it is for us and for all of us. I mean, it's not, you're even talking about text messages.
I think part of this is we have to go back. Paul has a great line in the book of Hebrews where he says, "Forsake not the assembling of yourselves together." I think COVID and the pandemic accelerated people's reliance on this kind of technology to connect with people. And churches are still suffering in that people are not coming in person. We have got to rally the troops, get back in person, begin to spend our Sabbaths, at least in part, spending our Sabbaths together. That is critical for us right now. The second thing is you've got to replace any bad habit with a good one. The way that the brain works, they're basically channels or lines that are created in the mind. Those have to be redone with new habits. So holding an actual Bible in your hand and reading it, having family Bible studies and family worship, and then doing door-to-door or outreach with real people so that you're not only trying to spread the gospel on social media, you actually are interacting with people as Christ did. So you got to find ways to do good things in the real world with real people, or else this will take over.
Excellent. When we return, we'll continue talking with Dr. Eric Walsh about the use and impact of social media on our mental health. Stay with us. Today on Real Family Talk, we're talking with Dr. Eric Walsh on his findings of the effect of social media on mental health. Some years ago, children who were victims of bullying at school had an escape, an outlet, when they got home. Today, because of social media and technology, we have the unfortunate reality of cyberbullying, which can take place from anywhere, at any time. What is cyberbullying and what are the effects of it, Dr. Walsh?
Well, 59% of kids say that they've been bullied online, and 42% is offensive name calling, and then 32% is the spreading of false or malicious rumors. So you can already see that both of those things will damage a young person. There is no escape, as you said. and it can really begin to get to the point where kids are threatened. This has led to suicidality in young people because they can't escape it. And one of the great dangers of social media is that you can actually push kids into an arena or a place that they don't want to be. And the bullying is a part of that. Now, here's where it gets really scary, though. This bullying can stay online. And with the advent of artificial intelligence, young people can actually create things that aren't real about a person and put it out as bullying. We are entering a very scary time. And I'll just put a plug for our doctrine. This is why, we're going into what we call the little time of trouble. We had no idea 30 years ago that the little time of trouble could be, in essence, navigated solely online, that your reputation could be destroyed, and in your attempt to you have no way to restore your reputation. The brother who wrote Heavenly Man, Brother Yoon, the Chinese pastor, who, after being imprisoned and abused and beaten, separated from his family in China for being a Christian, said the worst persecution he received was in North America when his reputation was attacked with an online article. I can't emphasize this enough. We're going to have to be fortified. We're going to have to fortify our kids. And I believe this is one of the best reasons to have your child out of this arena. Also because people can use images, pictures, and create horrible things about your children, too bad to even state. So young people, this is a hugely damaging in those developmental years when what other people think about you matters so much. Now it feels like the whole world thinks this thing about you. It can lead to suicidality and really to some really bad outcomes.
You said something about, I want to follow up on this, about keeping our kids out of this arena. Mm-hmm. And I'd like you to say a little bit more about that. How exactly do you keep your kids out of this arena when smartphones are ubiquitous? Everyone has them, they're everywhere. What should parents be doing, and what kinds of boundaries should they be setting?
I read an article recently about a parent who realized the dangers of all of the posting of their children on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, all these pictures they were putting out there of where their child was, of where they go to eat dinner, where they go to vacation, what birthday parties look like in their house. And they realized, wait a minute, is this fair to my 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 4-year-old, that in 20 years, these pictures are going to still exist online? They may not want these pictures available to the world. We've got to pull our kids out. We've got to be very careful when we post pictures of our kids. And we've got to be even more careful how much time our kids have with cell phones in their hands. I would argue most parents should not allow their child to have a smartphone until they're about 14 years of age.
Wow.
If you want your child to get in touch with you, I would say give them a flip phone and program in the numbers you want them to be able to call, because there's really no good that comes from them having smartphones at an early age when they're so impressionable. They won't like it. They'll get mad at you. But if instead of smartphones, you find ways for them to join the Pathfinder Club, be at AY and Sabbath school, you get them into the healthy activity groups during the week, your child is going to have light years of an advantage over the kids who basically lived in a virtual world growing up and don't have those abilities. So I really encourage parents to pull back their kids out of this arena as much as they can.
Right. I appreciate what you're saying, because you're not even just talking about kids having access. You're talking about what parents are putting out about their kids. And, our daughter recently had a baby, so we just became grandparents recently. And that's one of the things we discussed prior to her having the child. How much information are you going to put online? And we're, there's so much pressure for people. Like, people have asked us, we don't post anything about our grandchild. And so many people ask, why don't you post? And we're saying, well, for one, it's not our child. And number two, is it fair?
We don't want his image out there.
Yeah, people could do anything with that.
Well, and there are better ways. You can create private family chats on WhatsApp.
Correct.
And just share it with people you love. Why does everybody need to see it? And this is where the narcissistic kind of influence comes in. Like, you've got to see my grandchild, because my grandchild, my child, my daughter, my son is smarter, better looking, more talented than everybody else's. And it's not healthy for the child. It's not healthy for the parent. And spiritually, let's really go to the nuts and bolts of this thing. Is this behavior going to develop Christ-like character? That's what Revelation chapter 7, 1 through 3 is talking about when it speaks about the seal of God. The seal of the living God, Ellen White says, is a seal that no human eye can see. It is a settling into the truth, both intellectually and spiritually. That cannot happen in the church if the church is egotistic, narcissistic, and wants everybody to focus on them rather than focusing on Christ.
Indeed.
Indeed. You're preaching a message that
we believe in,
we believe in and that needs to be preached. And you brought out the whole issue of the egoistic and narcissistic nature of this. And, you know, it's what was like the number one word last year in 2023 that people are using. But I don't think people really understand what that means and how demonic it is. I mean, it really is starting with Lucifer, with Satan.
Well, I like to call it Luciferian. You know, I will be like the Most High. I will ascend, you know. iPhone, you know, everything is I. iPad, iPhone, I. Yeah.
So it's really important for us to talk about that. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll return to talk more with Dr. Walsh. We're back on Real Family Talk, considering the effects of social media and social media usage. Dr. Walsh, please share with us some more of your concerns about social media usage.
So the big two things I want to make sure we touch before we close is, first of all, the ability now for peer pressure from a distance. There was a time when I was growing up, if the devil wanted to get into our house, he had to come through the TV or the radio or the front door. He has many more options of getting in. We now are seeing studies that alcohol use is being increased by social media induced peer pressure, which I would then extrapolate out to what I think is one of the most dangerous things that affect our society recently. That is the legalization of marijuana, which actually disrupts the dopaminergic pathways we talked about earlier, making you more sensitive to anything that increases dopamine and messing up motivation. There's so much more we could say about that, but social media will be what begins to influence your child towards a lot of these different things. It messes up sleep. I didn't talk about it earlier. The blue light from the cell phones and tablets actually impacts sleep and sleep quality, blocking the release of melatonin. So a lot of people have heard about that. Won't get into that now. But all of these things will work together to decrease academic performance, decrease health in children, change the way they see what's healthy and unhealthy, especially in the realm of sex and sexuality. All of this is going to converge on kids. So what peer pressure like influence social media is going to have, and this word influencers is a great way to say that. And this is why the mark of the beast is not just given in the forehead, it's given in the hand. Those that get it in the hand are following other people. And here's social media right on time for that prophecy and the way that Revelation lays it out to actually be fulfilled. But the other one I want to hit is from Matthew chapter 24 and verse 3, where Jesus says, as he's about to explain end time events to the disciples, he says, be careful. He says, beware. He says, be not be deceived. The Greek word for deceive there is the word planeo. It means to be led away. What we have found, one of the scariest things about social media is that it is a driver for deception. The church is living in an age of deception prophetically. Here is a tool Satan has to deceive you in a way not television or radio could have done 50 years ago, as powerful as those influences were for deception. And I want to really warn families that if you are not in God's word, and the social media is how you and your children are getting information, you will get false information. I've seen some crazy false information. Everything from oatmeal is horribly bad for you. Brown rice is horribly bad for you. All of this you find on social media. Young people do not need to be exposed to these lies. You've got to control the narrative in your home and to your children, or else you're going to be in trouble with your children's ability to stand for truth. One of the best examples of this is pornography. Pornography use has actually been shown to be increased in a sense because of social media exposure. There's a study that showed that there's a large percentage of young people who stumble upon it because of social media. Another way that we are being deceived. The church is called now to be a church that is the character of Christ, a church without spot or blemish. Social media is designed to dirty the character. as much good as we can do with it, if it gets out of hand, it was dirty to character in a way nothing in human history has.
Yeah. Uh, you raised some very important issues here that are just core to who we are as people of faith, and whether or not we're preparing for the final time, which we are living in right now. When we're talking about escaping social media, how exactly can we do so in a way that is productive and instead of being damaging to us? Because, our young adults and even our teenagers and our younger kids are so sucked into it that all kinds of things are falling by the wayside. What can parents do to help their children navigate these choppy waters that are a deception of Satan in these last days?
I would say if you look at how secular the world is, I find it fascinating that there are whole states and even the mayor of New York City, who we've had on one of the podcasts I do, they've all come out against social media. I mean, governments are coming out. They're warning about TikTok as a spy tool for a communist government, and they're warning about all of these different things. I would say this. If the governments of these places are worried about social media, how much more should we as Christians be worried about it? And so the healthy way to deal with this is to limit its use. That's the first thing. Find a way to put it in a box and limit the use. The second thing is make sure that Christ is at the center of all social media you do use, that Christ would be pleased with what you're doing with it. And third, let not social media replace actual social interaction. Yeah. Get out, like I said earlier, get out and be around people. Forsake not the assembling of yourselves together, fellowship with other believers, and reach unbelievers, not just digitally, but actually physically, meeting people's needs in person. This will make it so that social media isn't quite so enticing. And again, I believe the pandemic and the lockdowns driving people at home, this thing became even more of a crutch, as it were, for people to get connection they need. And ultimately, the connection we really need is that connection with Christ. And I don't know that social media alone can get that for you, no matter how it's used.
Yes, indeed. You spoke earlier about the fact that we need to have human contact, and the pandemic has not helped us where that is concerned, and certainly social media has been injurious where that is concerned. Can we talk a little bit perhaps of how parents can create an environment where Jesus is central in the home by going back to rebuilding the family altar and having family worship, so that we're spending time speaking about spiritual matters that fortify young people's brains and minds, so that you go out to the world, to school and what else, with the covering of God in your family or on your family?
Yeah. In a word, it's intentionality. Our families have to be intentional about seeking God, and it should happen twice a day. In the morning, we should read. I tell people read the Psalms or the Proverbs or Ecclesiastes. You don't only need to read a few verses to actually get full lessons that you can teach your child. You can then pray together. It can take 15, 20 minutes. Everybody goes their separate ways. But I do believe that the big meal you should have, we always talk about eating breakfast like a king and lunch like a prince and dinner like a pauper. You might not be able to get a lot of time in on a weekday in the morning, but your spiritual dinner should be the largest one you get, because you can plan to spend 35 minutes to an hour, and your family should structure the Bible study so that you go through books of the Bible, use the Bible commentary, the Adventist Bible commentary. I recommend the one from the 60s and 70s. Use Spirit of Prophecy and go through books of the Bible. Then go through themes. All right, we're going to go through the theme of righteousness by faith, and we have this book, and we're going to use it as a workbook for us as a family to go through these themes. Children are leaving the church, in their own words. There's a research study that was done. They said because there's not enough Bible studies. Young people said, I left because I didn't know what I believed. And that's not the fault of the youth pastor, even though, unfortunately, many of our churches think if we give enough pizza parties and play Christian rock and rap, we'll keep young people. You won't. If they don't know what they believe, the world will tell them to believe something else, and they will leave for that thing. And so I really want to encourage families, study in your home as if it was coursework. Have a plan and get through that plan together.
Absolutely. Wow. We definitely have to have you back, Dr. Walsh, because this is such a critical topic, and especially the topic of family worship and the importance of families taking responsibility for the spiritual nurture and discipleship of their children. So look, we know that God is interested in our spiritual, mental, physical, and emotional health. As such, we encourage all of you to take steps to guard every aspect of your health so that you may experience true happiness and peace. Thank you for joining us on Real Family Talk today, where we strengthen families and inspire hope. See you next time.